Hi. One of the most misunderstood features of QuickBooks Desktop is progress invoicing. So I want to show you sort of a quick introduction on how progress invoicing works and in what circumstances you will want to use it. First of all, we're working with QuickBooks Desktop, and it could be any version really. It could be QuickBooks Pro, Premier, Accountant, or Enterprise. There will be one specific feature while I'm doing the progress invoicing example that does not work in QuickBooks Pro, and I'll make sure to point that out. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we have estimates enabled, and we also have progress invoicing enabled. So I'm going to go into the edit menu, preferences, and then I'm going to click where it says job and estimates preferences, and then where it says company preferences. In here, you're going to see two options. You're going to see, do you create estimates, yes or no? And if I turn that on, you're going to see that progress invoicing is completely blurred out. You cannot do progress invoicing without the estimate. The estimate is the heart of the progress invoicing. So you got to have the estimates turned on. Now, notice that when I have progress invoice turned on, I don't have a feature here that allows me to automatically close the estimates when invoices are created, because by definition, a progress invoice is whenever we have an estimate and we're basically creating multiple invoices little by little until we complete the job. So there's one feature that if I turn off progress invoicing, I can hit this checkbox and the estimate will automatically be closed when I create the invoice against that estimate. However, because I'm doing progress invoicing, I don't want that estimate to close. So we basically have to manually close it at the very last invoice that we create. Anyway, so we have estimates turned on and we have progress invoicing turned on, and we'll go ahead and click OK. So let's start with the estimate. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on estimates, quotes or estimates. I can click on the home page, or I can go into the customers menu and click create estimates. Now, one thing I suggest is that you work with jobs. Always work with jobs. Now, a job would be a customer within a customer. So for example, let's say this customer, Mark Bauman, is asking me to do a different job than the home remodel. Maybe I'm going to do the office, right? So I want to create a job under Mark Bauman. So all I'm going to do is put a colon. So basically the two dots, a colon, and then I'll type the name of the job. So I'm going to call it office. And some people give it job numbers like 105 office or something like that. Depending on the type of industry you're in, maybe you want to give your jobs numbers, or maybe just descriptive names. And then I'll hit tab and QuickBooks will say, hey, wait a second, what is this 105 office under customer jobs? I'm going to go to quick add, and QuickBooks will automatically add it as a job, and you're going to see it in the drop down with an indentation. If I go to the customers menu and click on customer center, I should be able to go to my Mark Bauman customer, and I should be able to see both jobs under the customer. And it's possible you already have the job created from before and you don't have to create it on the fly on the invoice. That's fine as well. Okay, so there's my customer job. Now the other thing I want to do is under items, I want to have items that are basically a mixture of services, non-inventory parts, inventory parts, but all of the items I must keep track of their internal cost. It's really, really important that I keep track of the cost that at least I project to have upon that item. Okay, so let's start creating the estimate. Okay, so the first thing is I'm gonna select a service item. So I'm gonna select, for example, this one here called concrete slab. Now, really, really important, I must have enabled my internal cost and my markup in order for this whole thing to work. And later on, maybe when I do a more in-depth video on construction accounting, we'll discuss that. But trust me, you gotta have your internal cost and your markup turned on. So to check that, I'm gonna click on formatting, customize data layout, and then under columns, I need to make sure that I have, and then under columns, I need to make sure I got my cost and my markup. So notice my cost and my markup are turned on, and I don't have to turn markup on to the public, so I don't need to tell my customer how much money I make on the deal. So you can basically uncheck it on the print side, just have it checked on the screen side to make sure that we can manipulate it. So we have cost, markup, both those things have to be turned on, and I click OK. So let's say, for example, I'm going to make my own internal calculation. That concrete slab is going to cost me, let's say, $10,000. So under cost, I'm going to put $10,000, and then the sales price I want to sell it for, I can either work with markup. So for example, if I want to mark it up 20%, I can just type 20 and the percent symbol and hit tab, and QuickBooks will automatically add the $2,000 in there and make it $12,000. Or I can just not put a markup at all and then manually put whatever price I want to put up there in the total, and then when I hit tab, QuickBooks will calculate my markup in terms of dollar amounts. So I can either just put a whole dollar markup, put the total and let QuickBooks calculate the markup, or put a percentage and work off percentage. Now the other thing I want to suggest, so that's whenever we deal with a lump sum price. Let's say, for example, that I was buying services in pieces or in phases. Well, in that case, I want to use quantity. So for example, let's say installation. Let's say, for example, the installation on the entire project, just to say a number, it's 100 hours at $35 an hour, how much I have to pay. But when I pay them, I'm going to pay them in pieces. I'm going to pay them, 20 hours here, 30 hours here, 50 hours here. So for that, I recommend, instead of just having one lump sum cost, actually break it down with the units. So for example, we'll do there 100 hours times 35. And let's say, for example, that I want to double that for the sales price. So I'm going to put markup 100% and hit tab, and then allow QuickBooks to put the sales price there. Now, a lot of people freak out about this whole markup thing. Don't worry, when I click on preview, your customer is not going to see those markups. They're only going to see the final sales price. So there's really nothing for you to worry about somebody potentially seeing that markup. That's not going to be a problem. Okay, and let's say one more thing. Let's say I'm going to use an inventory part. Let me put an inventory part in here, and then I'm going to put a quantity of 1, and let's say I think it's going to cost me about $600, and I'll make $400 on that part, and that would be $1,000. And just for the sake of it, I'm going to turn off sales tax just to kind of simplify this whole thing. So down here, before I save, we're going to see subtotal 14,100. That's my internal cost. Markup 6,400, and then the sales price of 20,500. That's my estimate for the project, 20,500. So that's how we start. We always start again with an estimate and make a job. Always make a job, or try to make a job as much as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, hit save, and then we're going to start talking about progress invoicing, or invoicing in pieces. So there's a couple ways to progress invoice. One is I can just click on create invoice while I'm looking at the estimate, and then from there choose the progress, or I'm going to hit cancel here. I'm going to close the estimate, and then I'm going to go straight into the invoice screen, and I can just go to customers, create invoice, or to the home page, whatever. Then select my job, and QuickBooks is going to prompt me, do you want me to pull this information from an estimate? And if I select that and then hit OK, it's going to ask me the progress invoice question. So I can either start from the estimate or just pull it in. I prefer to start from the estimate. I think it becomes the best thing. So again, I'm going to start from the estimate, pull up my estimate, and create invoice from here. Perfect. So here's going to ask me invoice 100%. That basically wouldn't be a progress invoice. That would just be an invoice from an estimate. And then we can go from a percentage. So I can just say flat out, just do 20%, 30%, 40%, whatever. Or I can do the third option, which is my favorite, which is the one that actually allows you to go item by item and select how much of it you're going to be invoicing. So I'm going to select the third one and hit OK. And then on this screen is really, really neat. There's a lot of moving parts here, so it becomes a little bit confusing to a lot of people. And you can actually uncheck quantity and rate and percentage if you really want to simplify this and say, well, from the first line, I want to do 5,000. From the second line, I want to do, let's say, 5,000 as well. And for the third one, I'll leave it blank, and then I hit OK. So you can go this route and just put a lump sum amount, and QuickBooks will calculate the quantities for you. Okay, or I can hit clear here for a second, And I'm going to go back into the estimate, and I'm going to choose the other option just to show you the dynamic there. So I'm going to go into create invoice, select this third option, hit OK, and then have show quantity and rate, and then show percentage. And we may have to move these around for these to make sense. So all the ones that are grayed or kind of light blue there, those are the ones we really can modify. Those are information only. But these are white or lighter color. These are the ones that I can actually manipulate. So for example, under quantity, I can say, well, I want to invoice, let's say 25% of this. So I can literally just type 0.25 and it will do my calculation. Now in this case, I don't have to do 0.25. I can actually go to the column that says current, and in here choose whatever percentage I want. So let's say I want to do 40% and move out of that, and QuickBooks will make the whole calculation for me. So I can either put a percentage and QuickBooks will calculate how much of the quantity to use, which in this case is taking 40% of 1, which is the default quantity we put on that item, or I can go by specific quantities. So I can, this screen is very dynamic. I can either choose my quantity in portions, I can do the amount, or I can do the current, and then QuickBooks will decide for me what it will do. So if I put just the amount, QuickBooks will calculate for me quantity and percentage. So I can pick whatever I want, percentage, amount, or quantity, and let QuickBooks do the calculation. The real tricky part is inventory parts. Because normally when we do progress invoicing, we're going to invoice, let's say 20%, 40%, and then 40%, whatever it happens to be. We can't really invoice inventory parts in percentages because my inventory is going to go all haywire. So whenever you have inventory parts as part of your progress invoicing, I strongly recommend that you put the inventory part with a sales price of 0 and then have a separate item that represents how much of that inventory you're selling in portions. So let me hit cancel and show you what I mean by that. So what I would do if I'm dealing with an inventory part, so for example, this one that says wood exterior, I would actually put the cost of 600 because that is correct. But in the markup, I will put negative 100%. And that's going to say 0 basically. That way I'm going to sell the inventory. I'm not going to make any money on it. But then I'll make money on a second, I'll have some profit on a second line around. So for example, I'll create another item called, let's say, door or whatever. And let's assuming that's the one that I'm going to use. And I'll put here door installed, whatever I want to, whatever writing I want to put in here. Okay, so door installed. And then in here, I'm going to put a cost of 0 and then a markup of 1,000. And then that way, I'll be able to represent my door from the installation, not from the inventory part. And that would look, sometimes it could look a little weird. So it's really important that you remember, who your customer is and how you're dealing with that customer, because a confused customer doesn't pay their invoices in my experience. So if that's confusing to your customer, then you may want to rethink that. But this is going to make a lot of sense because when I invoice it, I'm not going to really screw up my inventory, you'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and hit close. And then, I wanted to add one more thing. If I don't want to show 2 separate lines, then what I can do is I can create a group, and then I'll show you real quick. I'll create a new group here, add new, and we'll click on group, and we're going to call this exterior door, okay? And then inside the group, I'll select the 2 items that I want to sell. So that would be my wood door exterior and that same framing, whatever item I was going to use. And then we'll do, let's say, 1 of each. And then I won't check print items in group. I won't check that. And then I'll copy the description over here. So I could use a group and not print the items inside the group. So I'll hit OK. And we'll see the group got added here. And then I can do the same type of work I did up here on the group. So let me delete these 2 lines. Delete line and delete line. So what's nice about having these groups with hidden items is that I can basically work these whatever way I want. And this is especially true for progress invoicing, and make all that inner working transparent for the client. So again, the product was 600, the markup was 0, and then the framing labor was 0 cost, but a markup of 1,000. Okay. Let's see. Oh, the markup for the door was negative 600 or negative 100%. There you go. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like in the print preview. And then you see it just looks like one item for the client. Everything else is hidden, and it allows you to do all these funky inner workings and it then be only information for yourself. So let me go ahead and hit close, and then I'm going to hit save. So we'll try this again now with these new components. So let me just delete these lines in between to make it a little bit easier to read when I do my progress invoicing. Now you can have the lines whenever you do this, but I'm doing it just to make it easier. So I'm going to do create invoice, and then I'm going to select the third option and then hit OK. And then let's go with the same approach that we're doing here. So we were going to do by percentage, we were going to do 40% of the first item, and then we're going to do 50% of the second item. And then let's assume that on the first invoice, I'm going to go ahead and consume the inventory part. So notice that I have two items. I got my inventory item and I got my my labor or my service item that's going to cover both. But let's say I'm not charging for that yet, but I am going to use the product itself on the job, so I want to get it off my inventory. So what I can do simply is just put quantity 1 here, and that will consume the inventory part without adding additional value to the invoice, but getting it off my inventory. So then I'll hit OK, and then you see what the invoice looks like. So it looks like we are consuming our inventory, which we're not selling anyway, and then we're not doing any framing labor down here, or which is basically the door that represents the door installed. And then we got 50 units of that 100 unit installation, and then we got 0.4 of that one lump sum of the concrete item that we put there. So then we're going to do a print preview to see what that looks like. Perfect. It just looks like two items and the dollar amount, and then I'll hit close, and then I'm going to click save and close and hit close. Now, where are we with this whole thing? We created an estimate, we did a progress invoicing, and each of the items got a whole different treatment because that's based on how the contract was, or that's how I wanted to do it. But then what reports do we monitor to figure out where we stand? So that's a really, really good good thing to know. So we're going to go to reports, jobs, time, and mileage. And then we're going to see this one called job progress invoicing versus estimates. And that's it. There really isn't any other report that really gives you any of this progress invoicing information. This is it. That's it. That's it for the report. So we're going to click on job progress invoicing and estimates, and then I'll click OK. And then what you're going to see here is you're going to see all your jobs across the board, including the one that I'm working on. You're going to see what the original estimate was, which this is basically what we're going to charge on the original estimate. And then we see on the progress invoicing what we have charged so far. And then we see 41%. Okay. And then if we double click on any of these, it's going to take me to the estimate for me to kind of see what's going on. Now, if I hit Control H on the keyboard, that's my history button, I can see all of the invoices that are attached to this estimate. Okay. If I also click on the side panel here on the right side on the show history, and then I click on transaction, I can see the related transaction. All the invoices are linked to this estimate. So as I create more invoices for progress on this estimate, we're going to see all that linkage. So let's go ahead and do it. Let's do now an invoice. Let's say this is going to be the second one out of 3. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the third option and then hit OK. And then what's awesome about this is that this actually keeps track of what's going on. Now, I hate that this window is so small, like everything has to be sort of moved around to see what's going on, but this is what we have. And we're going to see here where it says prior. This is really important. Prior percentage lets you know where you stand on your progress. So all the past invoices accumulates to 40% here and 50% here. So let's say, for example, we're going to go ahead and finish the concrete slab. So I'm going to do current. I'll do 60%. So that's basically going to complete that portion of the job. And you're going to see there where it says a total 100%. So that means I'm done with that. Let's say, for example, I'm going to do another 25% of the installation. So that's going to add up the 75% there for me. And let's say I'm going to do half of that door framing item, which is that door. So I'm going to come in here and just put 50. Okay. And then we're going to see that's my partial progress. I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to see a completely separate invoice, which is that second part of the progress. So we did like about 40% of the whole job at first, and this is like another 40%. And then we'll do a really small piece towards the end. Let's see what this looks like. We'll do a print preview real quick. And then you see only the portions that are being invoiced. So we'll hit close. And then we'll go ahead and hit save and close. So going back into that report, now we see that we have 89.02% of that job that has been invoiced so far. So that kind of lets you know the progress. Now there's another report worth looking at here in the reports menu, jobs time and mileage, called jobs estimates versus actuals summary or detail, either one. I'll do the detail real quick. And then I'm going to pull up that 105 job, hit OK. Now this report can also give you pretty good insight about this. If you see estimated revenue versus actual revenue, you can actually see the same amount of information, but you don't get that percentage of the progress so far. Now I can click on customize report and enable percentages here on the revenue side. And I'm going to go ahead and disable the cost side. Don't want to look at that for a second. To the percent side and then hit OK. And then I'll be able to see not what I have done for the job so far. I'm going to get now the opposite number. I'm going to get whatever I have left, which in this case, it says right here, I have 11% left of the job. So we have basically two reports that essentially give us very similar information, but one shows me whatever's left to complete, and the one before that, which was the job progress invoice versus estimate, this tells me what has been done so far. Now staying on this report for a second, you see that there's a whole bunch of jobs here, and basically every single job that is quote unquote in progress, it still shows here. However, you see some of these have 0 progress, some of these have 150% progress. It's really important that we use filters to remove some of the jobs that we're still not monitoring or they're not still in progress. So here it says customize report. What you can do is you can use filters. So for example, under the filters tab, there's a couple of things here, like let's look for estimate active right here, and it says either yes or no. So if I actually click on yes, this is going to and hit OK. This is only going to show me the estimates that are active. Now what does that mean? Okay, let's see what that means. So for example, if I go to this estimate, there's a little check mark up here that says mark as inactive. Let's say, for example, you didn't win this job. The client decided to say, no, this is not an active job. I can just mark it inactive by clicking the little checkbox up there and saving it. And then you're going to see that that job is going to go away from my report. So you can play with reports in that matter. There's other things you can do. Let me show you. For example, when I go in the customers menu and customer center, I'm going to go to my 105 job, double click on it, and then go to job info. And then I'm going to say job status in progress. Okay. And then I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to hit escape. And then I'm going to go into this report. I'm going to look at this one at the bottom. I'm going to double click on this one. And then I'm going to check. Actually, let me go into the customer center. This is a second story edition. So let me go into the customer center and look for that one. Okay, perfect. On this one, I'm going to edit it and then go to job info, and then I'm going to change it from in progress to, let's say, for example, awarded. Okay, and then I'm going to hit OK. Now this is really, really important, because when I look at a job progress report and I see a whole bunch of jobs, I think it's important for me to know what the status is. So I can go to customize report, go to filters, and then I'm going to search for status here somewhere. There it is, job status. And then I can say, you know what, only show me the ones that are in progress. And then I hit OK. Or I can go to customize report, filter, and say, hey, only show me the ones that are, let's say, pending, and hit OK. So that's really, really neat that I can give the jobs a status on top of whatever the real circumstances are with the estimate and the invoice. I can give it an actual status, and then I can use it for reporting filtering purposes. That way I can separate all of the different jobs based on, I guess, where they are. And you can also work with the other filter here. I'm going to search for status, job again, job. There's job type, and then job type is a drop-down menu in which I can choose to label my jobs however I want. So I can also run different reports based on different job types. So that's the reporting aspect of progress invoicing. So let me go back to my estimate here. Go to create estimates, go back into my estimates. There it is. Under transaction, I'm going to be able to see that there are two invoices linked to that estimate. That way I'm able to click on any of them and go to them if I need to. I can click on the little button there, and it'll take me to a report of linked transactions. If I wanted to print basically a report of all the transactions that are linked to that estimate, I can also click on the little button there. By the way, that's a very overlooked button that's there. It's actually great to be able to print a linked invoice transaction report. Anyway, the last thing is let's invoice the remaining amount. So I'm going to go to create invoice, and I'm going to select the third option and hit OK. And actually, let me hit cancel. That's not what I wanted to do. Let me go to create invoice, and let me select the first option, which notice that now has the word remaining amount. So it says create an invoice for the remaining amount. So I can just click on remaining amount, hit OK, and then QuickBooks keeps track of whatever you have invoiced so far. And then this one's going to finally invoice the very last pieces left. And then I'm going to hit save and close. And that should be complete. So when I run my report that I was looking at earlier, my job progress invoice versus estimate report, I should now see that this job has been done 100%. So at that point, I can probably mark my estimate inactive if I wanted to, or maybe going to onto my job 105, double click on it, and maybe click on job info and make this closed. Give this an end date, whatever happens to be, just so when I run my other reports or my other jobs are active, I can start filtering these, or if I'm monitoring like a job status report or something like that, I can see what the end dates are. So this is supposed to be a brief introduction to progress invoicing. I think we went a little bit in depth, but that will cover pretty much what you need to know. There's one little tiny thing, and it's really, really important. And this is the one that I mentioned, that this is not available in QuickBooks Pro. So if I have QuickBooks Accountant Edition, Enterprise Edition, or Premier Edition, and I have it on Contractor Edition mode, so I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. So if I'm in an Accountant Edition, I'm going to go to File, and then click on Toggle to another edition, and switch it to Contractor Mode, Contractor. Now, if you have QuickBooks Premier, that is going to ask you what edition you want to install, and that's the one that's going to be permanently into the computer. But if I'm working with Accountant or Enterprise, I can actually switch those editions on the fly. I use Accountant Edition, that's why I switch it on the fly. But for most end users, they'll just pick Contractor Edition when they first install it, and that will always be there. But that's an important thing to mention, because what I'm about to talk to you about, it's only a Contractor Edition or Contractor Mode only functionality. So basically, when I go into one of my estimates and I make a change to an existing estimate, so I'll pick any regular estimate I have here, and I'm going to make a change to an existing estimate. So I'm going to change, let's say, this 12 to 15, and then go down here, switch instead of the $60 per unit, $90 per unit, and then I click on save or save and close. You're going to see that QuickBooks will have this pop-up called add change order. Now, by the way, I work with many construction companies, and this is not what they mean by change order. QuickBooks calls it a change order because they're basically documenting via text. This is all they're doing is it's documenting via text, adding a note to the estimate, letting people know that, hey, this was changed from the first time it was saved. But this is not a change order. A change order should be a completely separate estimate, just containing those items that are being changed. So this is what QuickBooks calls a change order, but most of the times it's not. Anyway, I'm going to hit add to show you what that looks like. And then basically all the way in the bottom, you're going to see where it says change order, and it writes the word change order there. And it just writes verbiage. It just says, hey, this item changed, this item went up, this item went down. And at the end, the estimate changed by this much. Again, I don't recommend this being your strategy for change orders. For change orders, I recommend creating a completely separate estimate under the same job that you're going to then be invoicing afterwards. But this one little featurette, that's only on Premier, Accountant, or Enterprise Edition. And specifically, if you have Premier, you have to be on Contractor Edition when you install it for this to work. Anyway, that was the last little thing I wanted to show you. Differences between Pro, Premier on the progress invoicing. Hope that this video was useful. If you want me to make more videos, more in depth about this type of thing, make sure you add comments below, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and hope you learned something new.